welcome to the Atlanta Aero Club. And we've got our webcast today. We've been doing webcasts for about a year since the pandemic stopped us from meeting in person. And one of our most favorite people and a frequent guest, Jack Pelton, is our guest today. And Jack, can you hear us okay?
Loud and clear, Steve. Great to be with you.
Excellent. Well, so glad to have you here. And I do have to give a disclaimer. I am wearing my AOPA pin, almost 40 years with that organization. But just so you know, I've got my EAA current membership card as proof that I am card-carrying supporter.
Well, thank you, Steve.
So, and I want to thank not only Jack Pelton for being here, but I want to thank the people that sponsored this meeting for the Atlanta Aero Club and made it possible for us to operate during the last year, especially Gulfstream Aerospace, Delta Airlines, Epps Aviation, AvBuyer magazine publishing company, GA Buyer Europe, our friends at EAA that sent out this notice, and AOPA that we greatly appreciate your sharing this message with your members. And we also welcome our newest business members, Surge Air, Cargo Tracking, and Dodson International Aircraft Parts. Thank you for being members. And so Jack Pelton, as a lot of you know, needs no introduction, so I'll make it brief. Jack is the CEO of Experimental Aircraft Association, whose mission is to promote aviation and inspire people to fly, build, and engage in flight. That's a pretty broad statement right there, and they do a terrific job of it. Jack, you and I were down at Sun and Fun just a few 4 or 5 weeks ago. So what were your thoughts when you were down there and you saw the tremendous crowds that Captain Leanhouse brought in?
Yeah, we were, Steve, and I really looked forward to see kind of where we were as a nation relative to getting out and going to aviation events. What was kind of the current status and mood for people. And while it may have felt a little early because the vaccine was just getting rolled out, you couldn't have asked for a more successful event. It was great to see so many airplanes of people who had flown in, great attendance at the event. And being there, knowing that our show's coming up in July, was an opportunity to kind of look at what are they doing, how are people behaving, what are some of the social concerns we should have. And I think one thing that held true is our aviation community is very special. I never have seen in anything else going on right now during these times a more civil group of people who are respecting each other's spaces and respecting everybody's choices as to whether they wanted to wear a mask or not wear a mask, and basically just getting back to what we've done in the past, which is seeing good friends, seeing great airplanes, watching an air show, talking to exhibitors, and talking about all of the things that we have unfortunately only been able to do in small groups or by ourselves for when AirVenture arrives in July. 24 months since we've had that. So it's been a long time.
That must have been rough on you and everybody at Oshkosh, especially at EAA, when you have such a lead time to get everything together.
It was, but the team really did a fantastic job of sticking to our mission. We do an event 1 week a year, but we support our 240 plus thousand members 53 weeks a year, but 51 of them is non-AirVenture, which is getting our magazine out, doing our webinars, doing all of the things to support chapters and members and benefits. And, we learned a lot. We found that, as you have found, which Steve, thank you for continuing to keep the Atlanta Aero Club going with the virtual presentations. A lot of other aero clubs have not made it through this. And I've been watching your schedule and speakers, and you've done a great job of keeping the community together. So my hats off to you, and I hope your members appreciate the tireless effort you're doing, since you get paid so much for doing this.
It's a fortune. Yes, I wish.
But, we didn't miss a beat, and we continued to fundraise for a new project that we have, an addition on the museum. We were able to answer and continue to stay connected to our members during our normal work hours, and the team just weathered the storm in spite of very confusing times. I've commented, okay, so what was it like for you in this period of time? I've worked in the aerospace industry my whole life. You've got a mission. You've got, in my prior life, it was designing, building, certifying, delivering, and supporting airplanes and customers. And here you get up every day as the leader, and you're worried about your team. You're worried about the health and safety. You're worried about your community. You're worried about your members, and you're wondering, where is this all going? And it was a long, long, painful road of that was what you were working on every day. And, we were even in December of 2020 looking at July, and it was still very murky, the picture
Right.
of where would we be, and would we be able to have a successful and safe event? Unfortunately, everybody has stepped up and followed the precautions and gotten vaccinated, and we're watching the numbers tumbling. We worked very closely with the health departments, both in the city and the county and the state, to be able to every 3 weeks sit across the table with our masks on and wrestle through what's it going to take to be able to have the event. And more and more confidence was gained as we demonstrated to them the precautions we intend to take and we're going to keep in place for the event to make sure that it can be a safe event for our guests. And with the numbers that we're seeing in the vaccine rate, we're now at 50% of the nation's had, at least the adult population has had 2 vaccines, or if required. And so we're in great shape for July. We're ready to roll, and that's only 59 days away. So it's going to be on us here quickly.
It's right around the corner. And one of the things I enjoyed that you pivoted so well with was the online seminars during Oshkosh, the virtual Oshkosh. And I participated in some of those sessions with the builders. I thought you guys did a wonderful job with that. And is some of that technology going to carry over? You're going to cover Oshkosh with the social media during the event?
We will. We're not going to try to replace, we wrestled with, when we had Spirit of Aviation Week last July in place of AirVenture, is we didn't want to do anything that was giving the sense that you're replacing AirVenture, because AirVenture itself is a sensory event. It's all about the sights and sounds, the people, the friendships, the forums and the workshops. But some of the content type stuff we can continue to produce. And we learned a lot in our webinar series, seeing record attendance levels, at 4 times the normal uptake, and we increased the numbers of those throughout the entire year. So AirVenture this year, we just want you to be there. Just come. It's time to get back out. It's time to bring the family back together and be at AirVenture. And this year we are, when I say family, I don't mean only our aviation family, but our personal families, with Boeing sponsoring 18 years and under admission is free. So we're hoping that will help get a lot more youth exposed to all facets of aviation by being at AirVenture.
And I see you have an express arrival service, or it's a new system that you're going to allow people to check in, get their tags and their wristbands ahead of time. So it takes out a step in that process of face-to-face contact. Yeah,
we're really encouraging in the advanced purchase. Order your tickets online now. Discounts are good through the beginning of June. We will in advance send you your wristbands and your parking passes, so that it takes any of the queuing up or having to do a transaction at a booth out of the picture. So you can just come right in and get out on the grounds. And as we all know, being outside is very, very safe. And come enjoy the show and everything that it has to offer.
It's interesting. I've known you for many years before you were at EAA, and when I met you when you were president of Cessna Aircraft Company years ago, when I was with Trade-A-Plane, and your career has been an interesting one leading you up to this point. You were with Douglas Aircraft Company and Dornier and Cessna prior to EAA. And you want to touch a little bit on your career at those companies and how that kind of prepared you for where you are now?
Sure, but I'm not sure how well prepared me for where I am now, because I'll talk about the contrast to that. But I started right out of school at Douglas Aircraft and spent 20 plus years there in the commercial aircraft division. And actually, I was convinced that's where I was born and raised in Southern California, and that's where the company was. I thought I would be retiring from Douglas. Had a remarkable career, very lucky, had a lot of people that gave me a lot of chances to do things that I never dreamed I'd get to do in advancing myself. Worked on the MD-80 program, the MD-90 program, the 717 program, involved in operations, flight test engineering. And then when Boeing bought Douglas, it was kind of the opportunity to kind of reassess where's this all going. I think most of us felt that meant you would have to relocate to Seattle if you were a director or vice president. And the opportunity came up to go live in Germany for a couple of years with a private equity group that had bought Dornier aircraft from Mercedes-Benz and kind of restart a regional jet program there. Another fantastic experience. You know, if you're going to get an international assignment, what better place on the earth could you go than Bavaria, Germany, to be stuck internationally? It was wonderful. I ended up leaving before they finished the programs because Cessna recruited me out of there, and came to Cessna, and again landed in as the head of engineering and flight test, and thought that's where I would retire, as the head of engineering and flight test, because I was getting a little longer in the tooth of my career, and due to some circumstances that came up, I ended up becoming the chairman and CEO, and grew the company significantly, and had another wild ride of experiences through a couple of major economic downturns, and worked both Douglas and Cessna. I continue to tell people who ask me, you spent so much time at those companies. Why is that? And it was very similar to EA in the sense is very strong family companies where you had people who had worked multiple generations there. They were very committed to what the company's goal was and the products, dedicated like you can't believe, great atmosphere, great culture, loved it to death, still miss all of the people. So I still stay in touch with them, but I never dreamed that when I retired, that this is what I would end up doing. And I say that because it goes back to, I got involved in aviation because of my dad, who was a member of EAA Chapter 1 in, say, Riverside, California's Rubidoux Flaybob Airport. And so as a very young individual, I had exposure to what EA was all about. I knew I wanted to be in aviation. I got my pilot's license at a very early age. But EA was a big part of that. We'd come from California out to Oshkosh to the show, not every year, but we would come as we could make it out that far, and stayed involved through my Douglas years, my Cessna years as an exhibitor. Became very close friends with Tom Poberezny. And then when they asked me to join the board after I retired, I thought, oh yeah, this will be a nice little couple days a month, or actually 3 meetings a year is what the board meetings were. And I'll just continue to stay, enjoyed retirement. And they asked me to help out at a much deeper level than that. And here I am 7 years later, still here. And I really feel this is the right place for me to be. I think this is where I can actually help, because people know I'm very passionate about general aviation. I'm very passionate about the mission of EAA, making sure that the things in Washington are supportive of our personal needs in aviation. I love a good fight. And so this has been really a great place to be. The team here is outstanding. The only thing that, back to your earlier comment, is, did this get you ready for EAA? We don't design, certify, deliver, produce, and support airplanes. We're a membership, mission-based organization that's a nonprofit. And fortunately, I had been involved in nonprofits my entire professional life as a give back to all the communities that I've lived in. So I kind of knew what that was, but boy, this doesn't prepare you, especially for throwing an event. I have never, I didn't know anything about porta potties, food service, crowds admission, and all of that. But I think I've been able to lend a little something to the team to from an experience standpoint, and stick to my same credo: surround yourself with the best people, and try not to get in their way.
Well, as somebody that's attended 32 Oshkoshes, I can tell you, I am so appreciative of the changes. Not that it was ever bad, but the evolution, the growth of Oshkosh. We used to call it the Oshkosh Fly-In, and now it's AirVenture, and it's really a gathering of all of our friends. And you throw the biggest and arguably the best party in aviation every year right there in a little town in Wisconsin, and bring 600,000 of your closest friends in, And that's how you make all of us feel when we're there. As I was an exhibitor for many years, you'll come up and talk to all of us and check and make sure we're okay. And the whole world is watching you right now. And our little aero club in Atlanta and the people that are signing on from around the country, thank you. Around the world, actually, today. We thank you for doing this, because this is the litmus test of, are we getting back to normal? And I think the rest of the world, especially the people I work with in Europe, at GA Buyer Europe and AvBuyer Magazine, are looking to this, because this will, I think, show them the way coming out. They're, I think, a month or two behind us on the pandemic decreases in the cases and vaccines. And Friedrichshafen is just a great place,
Yeah,
and they had to cancel. So
it is, and I was sorry to see that. I mean, they moved it back and then they canceled, but it's a little bit different event because it's more indoors. I think as other places are watching to see what we're doing, there's a couple fundamental things that benefit us, but also precautions that we've taken that will help assure success. And one is, the majority of our event is outdoors. And so, where we are with the pandemic, being outdoors and spread out is a good thing, and it's okay. It's safe according to CDC. So we have that going for us. So the areas that you have to pay more attention to are the indoor activities. And we very on purpose early on made the decision that things like the Monday night concert, where you have 4,000 people shoulder to shoulder, we would cancel. We would cancel large indoor banquets that really were filling rooms to capacity or above. We canceled a lot of those. We've done a lot of work on even the flight line for the air shows. We're going to have a north and south, what we call show center point, so that will naturally cause people to spread out amongst the 3-mile flight line that we have, kind of a natural way of social distancing. Yeah. And we've looked at spacing out in our forums and workshops to help, again, alleviate some of the crowding and being on top of each other. The big one, though, that, a lot of people, this is a very important event to come visit our exhibitors, because it's a one-stop shopping for all things aviation, from, headsets to cylinders to oil to you name it. The exhibitors are all, 90+% going to be here, but we have 4 main exhibit halls, and the exhibit halls, we have taken a number of the exhibits out and moved them to 2 new locations on the south that are large tents. So the same number of exhibitors will be there, but they'll just be spread out. So the aisles in the exhibit halls are wider, bigger. There'll be some cross aisles. It'll give people a more comfortable feeling of movement and moving around, and of course, have the opportunity to decide how big a crowd do they want to get involved with. Yeah. We're really taking the path that a lot of this has to be people's personal responsibility of deciding what are they comfortable with, and decide if they want to wear a mask. That's great. We'll actually have disposable masks on the grounds for people. If they don't, that's their prerogative also. But we think that kind of watching what's happened at other events, that's one of the things that you just have to take into account, because you can't police it. And 2, if you did, or there were heavy mandates, you just couldn't have the event. So kind of the place we're in today, with CDC saying if you're vaccinated, you don't need a mask. We're just going to let human nature dictate how it goes. And the pre-sales indicating there's, like you said, a lot of pent up demand. So we're anticipating some large crowds. We made a big investment in sanitization and disinfecting using a nationally known professional company called Janiking, that will be on site with many people working through the shower houses and bathrooms and those kind of things, the hangars and the exhibits and the food court areas, staying on top, just to add that extra safety net under it. Whether, everybody can debate their issue as to whether it's necessary or not, but we made the decision to do it early. We committed to it, and we're going to stick to it during the event.
Well, all the events are starting to open up. AEA, our friends over there, Aircraft Electronics, will be in Dallas end of June. I'm planning on being out there. And so from what I'm seeing down here in Georgia, in the Grits Belt, is that people are out and about, Jack. They're going out to restaurants. People have the vaccine. They've gotten vaccinated, and the number of cases is dropping dramatically. And I was reading your interview with Paul Bertinelli from back in December, and this was just before all the vaccines really hit in mass that have changed things so quickly for us. And, it was hard to say what would happen, but you were very optimistic that we're going to have it. We just don't know exactly what it's going to look like. And based upon the CDC's last few announcements, no social distancing, and you can gather in groups from people that are vaccinated together. And so they're loosening up their oversight of these type of events. It's changed just in the last few weeks, hasn't it?
It has, and yeah, everything's good. I noticed some comments that are coming in as to let's not make this a COVID topic. Let's talk about airplanes and AirVenture and everything.
Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah.
Believe me, I'm all for that.
well, let's get off the COVID. Everybody's sick of that topic anyway.
Yes, we are.
We've had enough of that. There's some new technologies, Jack, that are really taking aviation, and I'm running across them in my work with the magazines that I work with, and I'm talking about unmanned aerial systems. And we recently had Brian Wynn, president of AVUSI, come speak on this same format about the technology that's coming for unmanned aerial systems. And these are drones, urban mobility vehicles. They're like multi-rotor helicopters is what they look like. Do you ever see a day when an experimental aircraft association member will build a multi-rotor type of aircraft, flying machine as a kit?
Whether it's a kit or not, I think the spirit of experimental aircraft and the history is, yes, somebody will. I mean, they every day people are looking and innovating. And I've made comments before that this whole unmanned aerial system movement that's going on, incredible amounts of money are being poured into it. I think you can argue, like any tech shift in major technology like that, there's going to be winners and losers. There's going to be failures. There's going to be a lot of money plowed into it. There's going to be a lot of people that lose money, and there's probably going to be some collateral damage that might not be good. That's just part of. I think Neil Armstrong said it, where if you're planning on doing anything courageous or innovative, there's always going to be risk associated with it. So that'll be the case. What I keep looking forward to is, I think, at a little more micro level, is that some of the technologies that are being developed, especially for flight control systems, the propulsion and power plant, whether it be electric or hydrogen or hybrid, all of that technology, I hope, will migrate first into the experimental category airplanes, and really start bringing in some leverage and advantage of that stuff that's getting developed by this private equity money that's spending money you and I can't spend, or Cessna can't spend, but that we may be able to be the beneficiary of a byproduct of that. And I think we'll start to see that. It's a little bit of you look what Garmin did with the Halo system on being able to get somebody home safely. I've got to believe there's going to be a very low cost kind of solution that comes out of some of this other development activities that'll migrate into the home build area. So it's exciting because it's the big areas that we have not seen. We've seen a lot in avionics, safety enhancements, technologies for the building, whether it be composites or metal or hybrids or hybrid materials, the laser cutting of material. I mean, they're building jet engines now with laser or the 3D
printing.
3D printing kinds of activities.
Yeah,
that's going to start coming down into our community, and that's pretty safe. But one area that's been long in coming is what are we going to do to replace the engine technology that's been around for 80 years. And I know the electric answer is right now constrained by batteries, but the money's being spent to develop that. So it's going to happen. And great place to demonstrate it is in the experimental area.
Well, I suspect you're going to see a lot of that. I was curious how much of the electric-powered fixed-wing aircraft exhibitors you're going to pick up are, this year. And do you see that as where a lot of flight schools may go to because they can recharge those, or you can just carry the battery out to the airplane, take the old one out from the last 2-hour flight, stick the new one in, and go flying?
That right now, the problem has been is that the batteries are too heavy and the regs don't support it yet. But I do see
Right.
at some point either battery or some hybrid version of power storage on board happening. There will be between Pipistrel and Buy and some other people will be displaying at AirVenture. We think one of the airplanes will be flying. Some of the urban air mobility folks and the innovative are going to be there also. And I think we have two of the companies that are talking about flying and demonstrating what they have, which, we've been waiting for quite a few years to actually see them in the air here. They have been, if you follow the news, they're out testing in other places. We just, as the public, haven't had a chance to have access to it. So the flight, one of the things that we have for as long as I've been alive, I've always said aviation's too expensive. The hurdles are too expensive. How are we going to bring this down? And these kinds of technologies are that kind of next step in helping bring down that hourly flight cost. And if you look at the numbers on it from a electric standpoint or a replacement for fossil fuel, it can make a big dent in what it costs for you to get your private pilot's license. So we're certainly encouraging it and hoping the development continues to accelerate and that we'll all get to see it.
Well, an old friend of mine has a flight school called ATP, and his family, and they run it. They have 400 airplanes now. I mean, it's amazing what they're doing. If you extrapolate out their fuel costs per hour times 400 aircraft times 365 days a year to go to an electric solution, or an electric option on some of those, might be an amazing cost savings for them and for the students. And so some of the other technology that is coming out that I think I really didn't understand the significance of it at the time, but Wheeling Aviation and Aero LEDs and some of these companies that have LED lighting technology, this is a tremendous improvement over the old light bulb technology that we've had in these aircraft, not only from a standpoint of that they're brighter and use a fraction of the energy, but they don't break. They're not brittle like these fluorescent bulbs, and even in the cockpit, in the cabins of corporate aircraft, those things potentially could break, be a hazard. And they're so much brighter, these LED systems. I see that being evolving quickly into a lot of different uses, not just aircraft, but
they're clearly going to be commonplace because you look at, I've been flying for 47 years and I can't think of even back to my primary training where you're going out and doing a pre-flight and you got a beacon that's not working because the bulbs burned out because they don't last but a couple hundred hours.
right.
The LEDs, while the upfront cost is coming down, that was kind of a concern as to how much you got to pay up front. But I think that will be, and so many of them now are just plug-in replacements. Yep. That will clearly be the way to go.
So, you're in a great spot. You and the industry leaders, you and Mark Baker from AOPA, and over the last 10 years, I've seen that all the organizations, and we called them the alphabet groups for so long, instead of doing their own thing, I've noticed that all of you have gotten together, and Matt Sicaro when he was alive at the Helicopter Association, and Mark Baker and you and Ed Boland at NBAA and all the organizations seem to be pulling together, and that seems like the recipe to give us better representation in Washington and better cooperation between each group.
I'm glad you recognize and see that because we do work really hard together. Pete, Mark, Ed, and I. So you've got NBAA Gamma.
Pete wants too, absolutely. Pete's amazing.
We are frequently either on the phone or prior to COVID, we would get together and really we would go through and really look at the agenda of priorities on what was important to the industry. and then kind of decide who's taking lead and then who's going to support, and making sure that everybody is in alignment as to what approach we're going to take, because you just can't afford, we're not that big of a population and voice to have us fractured or have us on different ends of the spectrum on issues. So, and we've had some gnarly ones that you debate and you wrestle around on, but get to a place that we all believe is the approach we collectively want to take. And it's really a pleasure to work with those guys. And the other interesting thing is we've all had personal relationships throughout the years. When I was at Cessna, I was on the NBA advisory board. I was at chairman of Gamma for a couple of years, and Mark was a customer of mine, and we've all know and respect each other, and it shows in how well we work together. And there isn't a week that goes by that there isn't something going back and forth between our advocacy groups that we all work on. And that's how things like Basic Med got done. That's how Mosaic's going to get done. And it just is thank goodness we have we have a lot of crossover in our membership too. So, like you, I'm an AOPA member, lifetime member, which, by the way, you need to be an EA lifetime member. You're still a young man. It still financially makes sense. So
it's fair enough, Jack.
Yeah.
You got it. And
I'm an AOPA life member, but like I tell Mark, I just won't wear his hat. I just won't do it.
Hey, and I owe AOPA. They gave me a hat down at Sun and Fun, and I'll come over and get one from you guys. I'll be proud to wear it. Over the years at Oshkosh, the 32 years I've been going, a lot of great stories, and not to get too mired in the minutia, but it's up to you. When I know you brought a video, if you want to show that in another couple of minutes. I wanted to ask you if you had a particular experience in your time attending EAA, because I know it's a labor of love for you, and you were coming there as president of Cessna, representing Cessna, and probably coming before then. I don't know how many times you've been, but what stands out in your mind as an exceptional day, something that pardon the expression, one for the logbook of your minds, of your memories at Oshkosh?
I've got just 3 comments I'll make on that. And I have been coming since I was actually a teen with my dad from Southern California. So I've come to a lot of AirVentures over the years. At least in the last 22 years, 22 straight. And then before that, probably another 10 or 15 of them. My memories are very, there are different phases and points in my life that they have occurred. The first one being going to AirVenture with my dad back when it was, just had started coming to Oshkosh and moved out of Rockford. And finally they developed where they had the seaplane base. And here I am, the youngest of 4 children, but the only one interested in aviation. And my dad owned a little Cessna 140A. My mom, when he was in the Army Air Corps, where he learned to fly in a Ryan PT-22, which I own a PT-22, and my son is named Ryan in honor of my dad's flying, and that's why I have the airplane. We had a chance for that father-son moment that you don't get when you're 19 years old, where we're at AirVenture, we go out to the seaplane base. We're from Southern California, so this whole Midwest and the lakes and all this is a new, wonderful adventure. We're just sitting out there watching the seaplanes coming in and out, having those talks that you just don't have at home, or the talks you don't have. Those will be forever a memory I will never forget. Talking to him about learning to fly and all of the other things with it. Then you roll forward to the Cessna days, and the memory there was telling my wife that when I retire, I will be here at AirVenture every year, but I'll get to do it in a lawn chair on the flight line, actually enjoying this, because when you work 7 days a week at the show, you don't get to see anything or do anything. And I did 20 years of doing that, so that didn't work. And unfortunately, I have yet to have that AirVenture where I wasn't involved. So now the current best memories is you jump in it, and every one of them, you go through this, incredible high through the week of seeing it all come together, seeing 5,000 volunteers, which this can't happen without them, who have dedicated themselves for generations to come and make sure that this thing happens and happens successfully. And at the end of the week, you reflect on what took place, and you reflect on all of the positive things that occurred. And, the unique people, the astronauts that were here, the events, the people you met from all over the world, and
Right.
you just feel blessed. It's just a wonderful, wonderful feeling. And you go to bed saying, I am the most exhausted I've ever been. I don't know how long I can do this again, if ever. And a week later you're at, I can't wait for the next one. Let's get going. Let's start planning. Let's make it happen. So those are my AirVenture memories.
Well, that's what we can expect this year, and I'm so glad we're getting a chance to come back. I was thinking about that. I was going to ask you that question, kind of leave it open to something that maybe stood out in your mind. In 1993, I had just started with Trade-A-Plane the year before, and you didn't have these big, beautiful exhibit halls back then. You had what are now the government hangars down on the flight line next to the place that sells those big soft ice creams.
Yeah.
You may have seen me there
Dogs. Yeah.
many times. And so in these halls, it was very hot, very, very hot that day because the ceilings were much lower in those hangars, so you didn't have the fans. So Greg Boyington from Baba Black Sheep was there, and he was signing his book. And they called him Pappy Boyington, and he was a World War II ace, and he was also an AVG pilot. Some people didn't realize that he had come through this. And so he was signing his book, Baba Black Sheep, right? So, because like the TV series.
Yep.
And so I thought that was amazing. And then there was another guy, R.T. Smith, who was a Flying Tiger pilot, who was really great, wonderful guy. And Tex Hill was walking around, these kind of iconic people that are right out of the history books of aviation, which I know you love as much as me. So I was out walking around in what they called the fly market back then. It was where the Vans airplanes are now. And there was a motor home, and I looked, and there's a guy sitting under this awning, Oriental gentleman, and Japanese look, and he was signing his book, Bye Bye Black Sheep. He was the Japanese pilot that shot down Pappy Boyington in World War II, like 100 yards away. So it's kind of interesting to see the history of aviation there. And then I went to the Cessna tent or booth one day, and I got to meet the president of Cessna. And oh yeah, that was you. And you were talking with your best buddy, Arnold Palmer.
Yeah.
So
Arnold.
I got to
Arnold
meet
was
Arnold Palmer right there with you.
he was a great ambassador for aviation and did a lot
Yeah.
of hard work on the business aviation side, and and had a great story in that he was actually afraid of flying, but he realized if he wanted to get around and do what he wanted to in golf and the professional career side of it, he needed to learn to fly, and he did, and continued to own lots of airplanes, eventually business jets, but phenomenal supporter of aviation. And while golf was his profession, clearly his hobby and passion was around aviation.
And didn't he buy the first model of every new Citation jet? Was he your launch customer?
He was originally a Lear guy, and then he was flying Lear jets, and then he got into the Citation 7, which is pretty fast in its day, and then the Citation 10, which when he finally retired from flying, that's what he had, which is the fastest business jet in the world.
Yeah, that was under your tutelage there that airplane really came into its own. And then,
No, this 10 was before me. It
was that Russ Meyer?
Yeah, it was Russ, and more or equally important was Milt Sills, who was the chief engineer. And when Milt was retiring, I was hired to transition to replace him. Great man.
Oh well, Cessna aircraft, we all learned to fly in those airplanes, and the Pipers too. I did get to see some very interesting, famous people at Oshkosh, and I had the chance to see, that I didn't know were in aviation, like Carroll Shelby and Harrison Ford. And I owned an airplane with Miles O'Brien. If you know Miles, he's a fantastic journalist and really one of the best that's out there. And got to see some of those people walking around. What do you see that this year at Oshkosh is going to be that's new in terms of aircraft or displays? Is it the Snowbirds who are flying this year?
No, we don't have a military demonstration. 2020 was supposed to have the snowbirds, and they committed to 2021, but because of the COVID is not behaving well in Canada, they still have a lot of problems
Oh,
up
right.
there, and so they are not leaving the country at this point in time. But we have a lineup that will, almost any year we only had the military jet teams recently, but there is you don't need one of those at Oshkosh. It's nice, but we put up enough interesting stuff in the air. This year we will roll over some of the things we had intended in 2020, like the salute to World War II, the end of World War II, 75th anniversary, calling it 75+1. But we'll be putting up a lot of very unique World War II airplanes in a historical kind of setting where we're going to kind of recognize certain conflicts that occurred during World War II with the specific airplanes that were in those conflicts. So it'll be historical in nature, but also some wonderful airplanes that we'll get to see. We're going to have the special forces from the Air Force, both doing some flying and demonstrations and jumping out of things and on the plaza, really representing some of the humanitarian relief that they do, some of the special missions that they do, which a lot of people are not familiar with. You're more familiar with the warfighters than the humanitarian. And dovetailing with that, we're also going to do some of the civil humanitarian, like Orbis that has the eye hospital, Samaritan's Purse, which is a DC-8, which you don't see many of those, will be on display, and some other relief organizations. As I mentioned, some of the innovation flying with the UASs, a full normal slate of the wonderful aerobatic performances that we all love will be there. So it'll be another jammed full, a lot of airplanes in the air. I think almost one of everything in the fighter inventory will be up, lighting up the skies. We're still going to have our 2 Wednesday and Saturday night air shows that conclude with, I think, one of the best fireworks shows in the entire nation.
Oh, it's unbelievable.
Great way to end the evening. We'll still have what we call our fun fly zone, which is down in the ultralight area in the evening. There'll be some STOL demonstrations and some other things going on. That's always fun to watch.
Short takeoff competitions, that kind of thing.
Yeah. And then we're still working on who will be speaking at Theater in the Woods, and we got a full forum and workshop agenda planned. You talk about the memorable AirVenture moments. I think one of the things, and this is a thing to consider when you're talking about bringing your kids out, taking advantage of the free admission, is, we usually always have some remarkable historic speakers, whether it be innovation, military history. Desert Storm, we're celebrating anniversary of Desert Storm. We're going to have some of the key participants in that. To have your kids to actually get to meet and see and hear up close and personal, because it's not like being on the news. These folks get to tell their stories in a very personal and passionate way. I'll never forget just the most recent, when we had the Apollo 13 reunion of the astronauts who were still with us at Theater in the Woods. And where else can you go see all in one place those folks telling their story? Absolutely nowhere. And the thing where you pinch yourself is they're all EA members and have been for years. And almost everyone who's been on an Apollo crew is an EA mission member. So you find that you kind of, like I said, you pinch yourself and says, what a really unique organization that has a membership that's very special.
And we lost Chuck Yeager, I guess, this last year, and I recall walking through EAA Oshkosh, and you're standing and getting a Coca-Cola somewhere, or getting a bratwurst, and next to you is Chuck Yeager, and you look over, you go, I just can't believe I'm standing here, and then you bump into Bob Hoover, walking by, and one of the things I really enjoy is your Warbird area. And I know Connie Bolin is an Atlanta lady, terrific pilot. I mean, she's just an amazing Warbird pilot. And she was a Delta Airlines captain to boot, and her husband, Connie Bolin, and Ed Bolin, and Connie Bolin flew B-17s, and she still fly. He passed away a few years ago, sadly, but she flies the P-51s. Is she the head of your warbird area again this year, or?
She's past president, but very active on the board of Warbirds. And like you said, she's an aviation legend, and
Unbelievable.
remarkable woman out of the Atlanta area, Griffin. And and also, kind of, you think back, here is somebody when we didn't even have many women airline pilots, and now you see a lot more in the cockpit. She was a pioneer, way ahead of her time, working for Delta, did it all on her own, didn't go through the military route. And Jack Roush, who has one of the most wonderful Bud Anderson P-51s, puts it completely in her hands because of how accomplished she is and how much he trusts just her to be the caretaker of that. And so that says the world for about what Connie has done. And that warbird area, again, it's a piece of history that, again, our young folks, we're not teaching it in schools like we used to. Some of the histories of World War II and the other things that have allowed us to preserve our country's democracy and freedoms. And you can go down and see and put yourself in, there were 18-year-old young people who were in these enormously awesome fighters that were rugged and tough, not knowing if they're going to come home at night just to defend our country. And it's all right there.
And one of the great features I love of that area, that's just one, there's so many areas of Oshkosh that AirVenture that are captivating and mesmerizing. And I was working the booth so much I didn't have time to do it every time, but Bob Hoover was sitting under the wing of a Spitfire down in the Warbird area, and he had one of the commentators interviewing him about his time in the RAF. He flew Spitfires in the RAF, I guess, or for the American fighter group over there. And he was talking about his missions while he's sitting under the wing of that airplane, and there's bleachers filled with people. And that's just an amazing event to hear firsthand.
Yeah, it's another one of our attractions we have, and it's called Warbirds in Review. And they publish a schedule all week long of down in the Warbirds area, as Steve mentioned, there's grandstands, and they highlight a given airplane. And that airplane then has a speaker who was prominent in history involved with that airplane, whether it be an ace, a pilot, a designer, or a restoration, somebody's restored one, that gives you that history lesson behind it that you just can't get from just reading a book. And it's all right there live with open questions and answer. And again, those are those kind of priceless pieces of AirVenture that I don't want to ever say we take for granted, but it's certainly something that you want to get out and participate in.
Well, I think you and everybody watching has this passion for aviation that separates us from from most other interest groups. I think people love photography. I think they're interested in boats. I think they like stamp collecting. But when you have that experience of flying in an airplane and seeing the world from above, it really clears your mind. It just puts it, for me, it puts everything in perspective. We're all just grains of sand on the beach of life when you're flying in a little airplane. And so you have some airplanes. You and Rose have some airplanes. Tell me about you've got a beautiful Cessna 195, which was the first corporate airplane, one of the first ever designed for that purpose, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was certainly marketed that way as the business liner. The one I have was the second chairman of Cessna owned it, Dwayne Wallace, who was Clyde Cessna's nephew. And Dwayne took the company over from Clyde in the late 30s and ran it till 1975 when Russ took over. He had since passed away, and his airplane was on display in, this is an oxymoron, but it's true, Liberal, Kansas. Has a museum there that his widow had the airplane. My wife and I had got to be good friends with her, and she wanted it to go to a good home. She was getting up into her 90s and wanted it to go to a good home. I had always loved the 195 and had been looking for one, and we were asked to buy it from her and be the it's not my airplane. I'm caretaking it for Dwayne Wallace for forever, I hope. And it's a beautiful airplane that's been to Oshkosh many, many times.
I've seen it. It's blue, isn't it? White and blue?
It's polished aluminum and with blue trim. So
Aluminum and blue.
yeah, it's a big silver radial engine beauty.
And there's a whole area with just Cessna 195s. I love the way that EAA puts the airplanes together like birds of a feather, if you will. And they flock together all the Stearmans are over there. And a couple years ago, I went and walked down and saw the Yaks and the Chinese fighters and the fighter trainers so many people have. And and you've got a Skycatcher.
I do. That's the airplane Rose learned to fly in, which was the first production 162 light sport airplane, and we do still have that. I'm hoping to teach the grandkids to fly in that. It's kind of they're getting closer. So the oldest one now is 13, so it's right around the corner.
Holy cow!
We're hoping.
And you've got a big Cessna twin, a 421 or 402?
I have a 414 that I use for transportation. And then I have the Ryan that I mentioned that was the airplane, the model of the airplane my dad was flying. Yeah. And then I also have a Stearman, and the Stearman was
Stearman. Nice.
Yeah.
That's the Boeing connection.
It's built in Wichita.
Oh, was it?
Yeah. And so it has it had its own unique history, the one I purchased. And actually my wife got it for me when I retired from Cessna, because again, my goal was to hang out at the airport and not work ever again. And at our airport, my buddies had Stearman, and my airport that I keep it at is called Stearman Field outside of Wichita. So I was going to be the 10th Stearman on the field. And matter of fact, I got a text message last night saying, "Do you still know where Stearman Field is and where your Stearman is? Because you're in Oshkosh all the time." So the old boys back there that planned on me retiring and hanging out with them, or at least they miss me.
You know, there's some people out there that are really shaking things up, and Elon Musk is one of them, and so is the head of Amazon with their space program, SpaceX, and especially Elon Musk. He's into battery technology now. They're building their own batteries. Lithium-ion technology is tremendously changing the ability of aircraft to use the electric power for longer. Elon Musk is up this year with our friends at Garmin as nominees for the Collier Trophy. And the Halo system is one of those nominations, and I think SpaceX is as well. Do those people ever contact you and say, "Gosh, we'd love to learn more about it"? At one time, I thought Elon Musk and some of these other innovators, these amazing game changers for technology, were interested in getting into flying in some way, aircraft manufacturing.
We have not heard from Elon. We did have a couple of years ago. It was during, I think, the Apollo reunion. Jeff Bezos brought Blue Origin.
Bezos, right?
He bought the rocket ship to have on display, and so I don't think these guys are there's a lot of ego there, a lot of money there, and they seem to be really completely involved in the space race, if you will, in the commercial space race. I think that naturally, especially if you look at somebody like an Amazon, they've got to be, I'm sure they've got money spent also on the urban air mobility. If package delivery is ever going to occur by any method other than ground postal services, I'm sure they're going to spend a lot of money to figure out how to help that.
Yeah. I read Elon Musk's book, which it talked about his father. You and he have something in common. Is he was raised in South Africa, and his dad had a red triple tail, I think Stinson, maybe it was a Stinson early model from the 50s or 40s, and they used to fly that around South Africa, land out in the bush, out in the middle of nowhere, and have a picnic lunch with his mother and so on. But he was raised flying around in light aircraft. I think there's some DNA, if you will, inside of him that we can tap to get him involved, because I would love to see the innovation Somebody that can bring that kind of excitement to our industry, which, you have done that too, Jack. You've brought a lot of excitement, interest to the industry, and tremendous, great spokesman for aviation, and we all just love it.
I think
Jack Roush,
I
one of
think
the nice guys too, that I've seen there at the show.
I think Elon and I, the only thing we have in common is we both have fathers. We both flew around in airplanes, but I wouldn't give up growing up in Southern California and being involved in aviation my entire career. He can do his own crazy things, but that's all we got in common.
Well, I saw that the EAA is teaming up with Microsoft Flight Simulator to provide scholarships, education resources this year. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, Microsoft came out with their new version of Flight Simulator, and it's unbelievable with the new technology and
Right.
resolution qualities that it has. And they're offering discounts to our members in purchasing the software, and we're making it available to our chapter network and our scholarship programs. And our chapter networks and our Young Eagle program, still, that's the cornerstone of what we do, is getting young people into aviation. And we've been very fortunate the last 2 years through the Ray Foundation to be able to offer to kids that are involved in chapters and have mentors scholarships that essentially pay for their full ability to get their pilot's license. And that number every year is staggering. It's $1 million that we give out $110,000 a year scholarships. This will be starting to head into our third year on that. But one of the differences as far as the model we're using is through our chapters and the mentoring our chapters. We thought we could turn the 80% dropout rate to 80% success rate by having people help these young people through the process. And so far, every year we have been over 80% success rate. And it's been fantastic to see these young people, their stories and how quickly they're moving through it. And the fact that we've been able to be able to help in that process through our chapters it's been great. And it's knock on wood, it's incredibly successful.
How many chapters are there in the EAA right now, Jack?
We're getting close to 100 worldwide. Most of them are in the U.S.
100?
Excuse me, 800.
800. Yeah. I was
Oh, I
thinking
said
more
100.
than that.
No, yeah, 800 to 900, and it's another good way, especially with the Young Eagle rides, is to get a young person out for a free ride to experience being up in the air, kind of what you were saying, Steve, being able to look down and see things for the first time. And then we're developing and building more programs around, okay, after I take that ride, how do I stay engaged? How do I get the parents engaged? How do I show them pathways for careers in aviation? And in July, we're going to announce a big program called Aero Educate that will do just that through their computer at home. It's geared towards the young eagle who took the flight, the parent, which is integral part of the support system. You got to get them on board, and their teachers by providing educational support for them in that area. And we're really, really thrilled about this new program.
Well, I'm so excited to be headed back up to Oshkosh in 59 days to see you and all our friends up there. I can't believe we've gone almost through an hour here, and there's other things, we could talk all day. I mean, the funny thing about aviation is you could have, socioeconomic group has nothing to do with passion for aviation. You could have the richest guy in the world, the poorest guy in the world, and they could talk all day about airplanes and keep talking. I did want to point out something on our local level here. There's 7 aero clubs in the United States, and there's the Washington Aero Club that you know about, the New England Aero Club, one of the oldest, Northern California, which your old stomping grounds, has a chapter up there, and the Southern California does a very good job. And of course, Dave Franson at the Wichita Aero Club does a wonderful job there. And we have a award that we give out, our Epps Award. And Pat Epps.
Sure do. He's a legend.
He's an amazing guy. And 11 years ago, we started an award in the Epps name. The Epps Award is given in the name of Ben T. Epps, Pat Epps' dad, and the Epps family, as they've made such a positive impact on aviation. And our annual award goes to the person that has made significant contributions to the aviation community in our region. And I wanted to announce that Michael Williams, the president of Jet Air, is our recognized recipient this year for his outstanding achievement to safety. And he is the designer through Jet Air of the, this is something you'll appreciate from your Douglas and Boeing days, is he developed the foamed fire suppression systems for the cargo compartments for all airliners. He was the inventor of that, and after we had that terrible crash down in Florida due to the cargo compartment becoming catching fire, and so Michael Williams, who's an active SR-22 pilot, a super great guy, and a member of the Aero Club, want to announce that he is our EPS Award winner, and we will give him that award at our upcoming in-person event, which should be in August of this year.